Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2, joining me today is...
Hey, I'm that Matt Kid.
A geek for fun.
And the guy who picked the topic. Steve always undersells himself, it's so sad. You hate to see it. We need to, give Steve epic introductions. I have to kind of set myself low because then when I drop fire, it just feels more surprising.
Fair. Anyway, so today we're here. We're doing something, kind of semi-topical. We're a couple weeks late to really ride that algorithm, but that's okay. We're talking about The Suicide Squad, the newest film out of the DCEU, directed by James Gunn, written by James Gunn too, I believe, or at least co-written.
Written and directed by James Gunn. Yeah,
starring Idris Elba, Margot Robbie, Peter Capaldi, John Cena. Is Sylvester Stallone playing King Shark?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought was going on with that. I saw him in the opening credits and I was like, wait, who the fuck's Sylvester Stallone in this movie? And I started really listening to King Shark. Anyway, so this is kind of a long time coming. It's a quasi-sequel / reboot to 2016's Suicide Squad. So it's the Suicide Squad to try to piggyback off of the good and also kind of hide the shame of the original. It's trying to overtake the Google results when you search Suicide Squad film. And, it's interesting because usually when you do something like this, you try to put so much distance between the first film and the second, and this it certainly does, but it just treats it like a reintroduction to the thing. But I guess one thing that I was impressed by right off the bat with this is that it fully is a sequel. It does not ignore anything expressly from the first movie. It's got the same cast, or some of the same cast returning. It's got it doesn't negate anything from the first film, except for being a better film. So I don't know. I was a bit impressed in that regard. Steve, I think I'm echoing on your end.
Oh, my bad.
But yeah, those are my general thoughts. Matt kind of left us with the big teaser moment, from last episode where Steve announced the topic and Matt said, "Oh no, I've got to watch that again." So I'll throw it over to Matt. What are your general thoughts on the Suicide Squad?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an improvement over the original film for me, but also understand that, at least to me, and I think for most people, that's a pretty low bar, so just saying that in and of itself is not a huge accomplishment. I've watched it twice, because I watched it when it first dropped, and then I watched it this morning, and I don't know. For me, I think it just ultimately comes down to James Gunn and I are just not vibing on the same wavelength. I've just never been super into the films of his I've seen. His humor and his sensibilities don't seem to hit for me, especially when they are allowed to be as unrestrained as they are here. I certainly appreciate that it is totally his movie, that he got to make the way he wanted to make it, and I'm super glad for that. And you can definitely feel the passion and love and the excitement that he has in making the film. But there's nothing here that I felt was like, if I wanted a really irreverent action comedy, set in DC continuity that does Harley Quinn justice, I'm just gonna watch Birds of Prey. Like, this just doesn't do much for me. Most of the humor, at least a good chunk of it, just doesn't hit for me, but James Gunn's humor has very rarely hit for me. So I don't know. Overall, I thought it was fine. Like, I thought it was okay, but certainly don't understand why people seem to, like, fucking love it.
Okay.
It's kind of where I'm at with it.
Okay. I have a feeling I know how this is going to go, so I'm gonna throw it over to Steve next to see if we'll get the kind of balance I'm hoping for here. Steve, what are your general thoughts on the Suicide Squad?
So, I want to be as nuanced and clear about this as possible. So, as a person that loves the Suicide Squad comics, as an adaptation, this is not what I want. This is still not what I want. As far as an adaptation goes, this is as close to the comics as the first movie was, to be honest. It might not even be as close in some respects. So as an adaptation, this is not the kind of Suicide Squad movie I want. They make a lot of weird choices with the characters and adaptations because they adapt some things kind of straight and then they screw with it. I don't like the way they characterize Rick Flag in this from an adaptation perspective, irrespective of how he actually is in the film. They adapt basically the big final arc from the original series where they go to Jotunheim, and they basically just do all of the cool shit that Rick Flag is known for and give it to other characters, even though Rick Flag is in this movie. And I just don't like that. I don't like the way that this is. People criticize the first one for having a villain that is way too powerful for these kinds of characters, and then this one just doubles down on it, and I don't like that choice. The sort of bare bones premise of this movie earlier on, which should have just been the squad goes down to a country that used to be US friendly, had a revolution, and now needs to take out the people in charge. That's a Suicide Squad story. That's what I want. So from an adaptation perspective, I don't particularly like it in that way. As a movie on its own, it's fine. It's entertaining. It's one of those things that I could watch multiple times and enjoy. It's charming and funny in places, even though I'm not a big James Gunn fan. And I think it's very, very competently made. As a DC Universe movie in the Ryan so far, this is by far the best thing they've done, and I would watch this 100 times over anything else in this franchise.
I didn't realize you hated Birds of Prey too.
I did. I did not like Birds of Prey. I legitimately...
Steve Baxi hates women, confirmed.
I do hate women. From a DC Universe perspective, this is the first movie I think they made that I would unabashedly call good. I like Aquaman, okay? I think Aquaman is a big, goofy, sincere movie. It's not great, and I would not show it to most people looking for a good action movie, but it's fine and charming. This is the only movie they've made that I think is legitimately good. It's not a great movie. Like I said before, it's a very sort of middle-of-the-road average movie on any other scale. But for this franchise, it is far and above the best one they've made.
You didn't like Shazam either?
No, I did not like Shazam.
God damn.
Shazam was also pretty terrible.
Jesus. Ugh.
I liked Aquaman.
I mean, that's...
Aquaman was fun as hell.
All right. I'm just, like, trying to get a sense of things of, like, I thought Shazam was a pretty good turnaround point, but okay. All right, here we go. Alfie, general thoughts on the Suicide Squad?
Well, I think Matt basically put it the same way I felt.
Another fucking week of this. I swear to fucking God. All of you. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and fuck you.
Okay. Well, I loved it. It was cinema, you know. I was gut busting every single step of the way. Best DC film since the Avengers. I'm absolutely amazed, and they've done it yet again. James Gunn is a masterpiece. That's the revised version to make you happy.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Now I need you to stick with that for the next hour and not change your mind. No, I mean it's fine. Like I didn't watch this movie and like fall in love with it. I think it was like the greatest film ever, but like I legitimately thought it was a good movie. I legitimately thought it was really funny. I was cracking up laughing watching this with Haley within the first like 10 minutes. I thought this was like I watched this and I got like actively mad that this couldn't be the introduction for Suicide Squad for the general audience, because personally, everything Steve was talking about with like, oh, giving the Rick Flag moments to other characters, and this isn't, and the Suicide Squad should only be dealing with like, you know, a small scale, you know, government upheaval kind of thing. No, fuck, I give no fucks. Suicide Squad comics, I literally, you could burn every copy and I would go, well, that's unfortunate. I hear some people actually like those. I do not give a single shit about the Suicide Squad like comics, and mostly because it's one of those things, yeah, I should probably get to them, but I haven't. But just watching this movie, taking it as a movie, getting to have that kind of like, you know, casual fan of the movie's experience where I go in without any expectations on who 90% of the characters are. Like, I know King Shark, but he's like a fucking bruiser. You know, I've yet to see the complex King Shark characterization outside of the Harley Quinn show, I guess. So I watched this and I legitimately found it funny. I legitimately enjoyed it. I liked the points that it made. I thought it had a pretty good, you know, dynamic between the characters. I enjoyed the way it was shot. I enjoyed just it. And now here I am again taking thing that I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. And now I'm gonna have to like fucking champion this movie for an hour.
I'm on your side here though, right? Like I legitimately enjoyed this movie. I thought it was funny. I'm not in a landscape of every other movie that is not a genre superhero movie. It's just fine in middle of the road. But like watching it within the context of the universe it's in, I had a much better time. And like Ian, like within the first 10 minutes with the fucking weasel guy, that was so fucking funny to me. And I don't like James Gunn humor typically, but I was legitimately laughing out loud with a lot of these jokes. John Cena in particular is fucking hilarious. And I had no idea that dude was that good at comedy. But, like, every time he's on screen and he just has, like, a one-liner, it's always funny for me and it always lands. Like, there's that great fucking moment where he's showing off while they're murdering all of the good guys. And Idris Elba's like, no one likes to show off. And then he's like, not unless what they're doing is fucking dope. And Idris Elba's like, damn it, he's right.
It's like some fucking Team 4-star humor right there for me, man. I just... Like, okay, you say you're on my side, but then you sell it like... am I the only one that heard Steve talk about this movie for like 5 minutes and think, oh yeah, so he didn't really like it?
I enjoyed it. I think as a movie, it's a good middle-of-the-road fun time where I'll have popcorn and watch it multiple times. And as a DC Universe movie, it's fucking great. And as a Suicide Squad adaptation, it's bad.
Oh, I hate you.
Nah, Steve. You know what? I want to know where you died inside, because Ian is absolutely spitting right now. Like, you pretentious fuck. How could you? This movie is absolutely like, it's just a good movie. You can just sit back, kick back, and just enjoy watching. Like, you don't have to give it half compliments, Steve. Like, just say it's good objectively, because it's objectively amazing.
Thank you, Alfie. I appreciate you so much.
I know we will get to a lot of other things. Can I, because I'm the only person with the context, can I just talk about real quick why, as a Suicide Squad movie, the movie pisses me off?
Yeah, I guess. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Alright, so there's one core theme for every character in this movie, which is all of their parents are terrible and have fucked them up, and they have very complicated relationships. And is that a fair assessment to say?
Well, I mean, I think Ratcatcher's dad's like decent. It's like a bad person but a good father, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so he's more of a nuance, but is it fair to say that each of these characters has some kind of complicated relationship with their parents, and that's the focal point for their arcs?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Rick Flag's name is Rick Flag Jr., and his entire arc in the comics is that he's living up to the expectations of his father. And I don't understand how you make an entire movie about the theme of parents and their relationship to their children and don't give a single moment like that to Rick Flag Jr.
Because you don't need it? Because the other characters are more interesting than Rick Flag?
And so that's the other thing. It's like, okay, well, maybe the criticism would be like, okay, maybe they just didn't read the original comics, which is also not true, because they give a scene in towards the end of the movie where Peacemaker and Rick Flag are having their little standoff, and Peacemaker is like, look, I really, really respect you, but I gotta do this because it's my mission. And that is a scene from the comics that Rick Flag has with Batman, but they give it to Peacemaker for some reason. This whole movie, Jotunheim, is an adaptation of the last Rick Flag arc from the original run, where he dies going to Jotunheim to stop the Nazi superweapons and to fight the supervillain group in that place. And he dies at the end as a hero, and he overcomes his whole fear and relationship with his dad. And clearly they have read that stuff, and they make references to that stuff throughout the movie, but they don't give any of those scenes to Rick Flag. And it's so weird to me. If that's the case, why the fuck's he in the movie?
Because he was in the last movie.
So are a bunch of other people.
Yeah, and most of them die.
Now, I will say, I actually really like Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag. I think he does a really good job in this movie, and I like the version of him he's playing. But just as a comic book Suicide Squad fanboy, I don't understand why you put him in this movie, do all of the stuff that he's famous for, and give him none of it. That's just such a strange choice.
You're having a real Thomas Jane Punisher moment, aren't you?
Strange choice?
I mean, maybe. I think you're having like a real Thomas Jane Punisher movie moment right now, where like it's objectively a good film, but all the Punisher fans hate it. You know?
I mean, okay, but so no, I love Thomas Jane Punisher movie. I see where you're going with that, but I just think it's different when you're just taking the name and like the basic origin and making a good movie out of it, because that's what most comic book movies were for a long time. This is not that. This is, you had to have mined this material and actively decided to not do the stuff from the comics where Rick Flag is famous for.
No, I mean, I get you, and I think that's the truth.
As it is.
I think that's the
And
truth.
there's no reason why the Rick Flag stuff.
No, there is a reason.
not-
There is a reason.
Why?
Because it's given to the other characters who have bigger actors attached to the name. Like that's the choice.
Why is he in the movie?
Because he was in the last movie.
Again, it's just a bizarre choice, though, to be like, you're literally taking a Rick Flag story and putting Rick Flag in the movie and not doing anything with Rick Flag.
I mean,
it's very strange.
I mean, I guess, but I guess I'm kind of desensitized to that, especially after like how many MCU movies do similar things. Like, I don't know, fucking Iron Man 3. Doing all like this Mandarin stuff and then give it to other character who is not the Mandarin, you know? Kind of thought that.
I mean, I just think it's weird because Rick Flag is the one who gets the big final showdown with Peacemaker at the end, despite the fact that, you know, Bloodsport has more or less been the central character through which we're seeing the story.
Well, I mean,
and then
he gets,
Bloodsport just shows up and shoots the guy.
I mean, I would say that's like part and parcel of an ensemble film, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
Like, that's, you know, you don't necessarily, like, yeah, Rick Flag gets the big showdown moment, and that's, like, the tragedy is he can't be the hero he wants to be. He dies fighting, kind of thing.
But I don't care, because this movie, like, for me, Rick Flag is better written and better performed and gets to do more, but this is still not a character that I got to know, and so when he gets stabbed in the heart, I just don't care. That's my biggest thing with Rick Flag. I mean, I know nothing about him in the comics. I thought he was serviceable here, but if they expect me to care when he gets stabbed to death, and I'm just like, well, I don't have the emotional attachment to Rick Flag that I have to like Ratcatcher or even King Shark, because we just didn't give him much.
I mean,
so
I guess that's
kind of
fair.
see where Steve is coming from.
I guess that's fair. It's just I think it works because, you know, you get a little bit with him, especially like the whole we've got to go save Harley, we don't leave anyone behind, I'm like the voice of reason, I'm the level-headed one on the team. I could understand not getting much of a connection to him, but I think he does work. He does function in story. Steve, I'm echoing again. I do think he does work. I do think he does function in story. He might not be like the most compelling character, and I think that's. I mean, if he lost his stuff to the other characters, so fucking be it. I don't care about Rick Flag anyway. Like, comic book wise, I don't give a shit.
Okay, but see, this is my thing: is you don't care about him because you don't know him from the comics. I'm saying from an adaptation perspective, they actively made him a character in this that you couldn't care about that you easily could have, and that's a weird thing for me. I still really like him in this movie. I don't necessarily agree with Matt that that he wasn't focused on enough for me to care when he gets stabbed in the heart, because I think that's a really good scene, and I think he's acting really, really well with the ensemble. And there is just in the performance a lot of good history between him and Idris Elba that they don't go into in detail, but just the way those guys act around each other, you can really tell that they're good friends. And I think for an ensemble movie that's basically just one sequence all the way through, it works well enough to where you get enough context to be in on the mission, and you don't need more than that. So I think all of that's good, and I like all of that. But I'm just saying, from the perspective of the person that reads the comics, that likes this character in the comics, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me that you took everything interesting from him away, gave it to other characters, and then just actively chose not to do anything with him if he was going to be in the movie at all.
Alfie, you've been too quiet. And you can give your real opinions. You don't have to champion me. It's fine.
You already basically said everything I wanted to here. So the thing that I'm going with kind of on this with like Rick Flag is kind of gag or not to gag. Damn it, my two conflicting interests. Alright, I'll just say a real thing for the bet. So like the idea of Steve's getting across, I do think there's no real right answer here, because inherently with a character like Rick Flag, who is, as he is created, is like a scythe. Like he's the military character in the Suicide Squad. He's the liaison with Amanda Waller. He's the straight man. Like he's kind of perfunctory and can easily just become perfunctory. And if Steve was saying everything true, that the original Suicide Squad run managed to give him all these great character moments, all these great traits. And give it to them. The question I'll give to you, Steve, which will kind of inform this, is do you, in that story that this is adapting, right, is Rick Flag the main character who's getting all the best moments, or is the rest of the Suicide Squad team in that arc also getting good moments? Because
it's a Rick Flag story. He's the central character. He's the one that gets the arc and all of that. He dies in that story. That's his original death.
So what this becomes in an adaptation, right, is in a arc in a book, you can have the team take a backseat for one major character to have the main thrust of the arc, because the next arc can be focused on someone else. In a movie, you don't have that luxury. In a movie, you do have to, especially an ensemble film like this, play a little bit more fair to everyone. So if they are adapting that specific story, which you mentioned, like down to the name, down to the moments and stuff, it makes sense that, okay, this is a Rick Flag story in the Suicide Squad book, because the Suicide Squad has no central character kind of thing. So let's just take all those best moments and split them across the group. Still give Rick Flag things. Again, I didn't really care for Rick Flag, but just judging from people's reactions on Twitter and everything, like, people seem to really like him in this movie. Like, I think this movie still did its good job of, it didn't waste the character. Like, he's still got scenes to do. The actor still got stuff to do, and he dies in this. But again, he has the heroic death. So that would be my. If I cared about the character, Steve, I think I'd be in the same boat as you, where I just wished the character I liked got the story they adapted, like, full plain simple. But I do think just from an adaptation standpoint, Suicide Squad is just so limited that it makes sense that if this is the arc and these are the beats, let's split them off and give them to different characters just to make the most that this is a team movie.
It just seems like from a writing standpoint, it takes more work to make him less interesting.
I don't know about that. I think he's kind of the fault. He's a military dude, Steve. Like, those are always...
But see, he's not. Like, he is more interesting than that. And you actively have to make the decision that he gets a great scene and you're going to write it out and give it to Peacemaker. And he gets all of this stuff in the comics about his relationship to his parents, and you actively have to see that and write it out and give it to other characters. It seems like it does actively take more work to just be like, let's put him in the movie, give all of his characterization to other people and not give it to him, instead of just not having him in the movie.
Okay,
Like, but it's glaring that he's in here in a story that's about him, that's not actually about him.
Okay, I'm gonna pop in with one thing, and I want to just make this point. We can talk about it for a minute, and I do want to move on because we've been on this for like a long ass time. It's not a good movie, but I think something that is worth thinking on is Rick Flag does get a character arc in the film that precedes this, and so the idea of caring about Rick Flag, the idea of Rick Flag getting his own story, you know, aside from the adaptation points that are taken and changed and given to the other characters, Rick Flag got development in the last movie, and he's one of the 4 returning characters from that film. And so it would not necessarily not make sense, but it doesn't seem as necessary to give him further development for this film. When you've got new characters that you want to focus on and you're trying to revitalize the brand and stuff. I don't know like how much that fixes things, especially because that is such a bad film, but I just want to throw that out there as another point in the choices made in adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, I like the movie. I think that's all fair. But like I said, I'm just talking about it from the perspective of someone that likes the comics. I think I would have been happier if they just didn't put him in the movie.
I mean, I think he serves a good purpose in the film as itself. I think that the the comic expectations kind of maybe hurt that a little bit then. But anyway, I want to go ahead and move on. So yeah, I think it's funny because for me the thing that just instantly sold me on this movie was doing the introduction the way that they did it. You know, it's really amusing because like one of the problems with the first film was they introduced Harley Quinn like 3 times. And they do that for a lot of the characters. It's edited so haphazardly that like each character gets 3 introductions, and then it's forever before we're in the premise, and we have to like throw in Slipknot at the last possible second just to really show how the Suicide Squad works, and then he goes off and dies. Whereas this, I thought, handled the premise of just displaying the Suicide Squad really well by killing off a Suicide Squad almost in its entirety right in the prologue of the film. I thought that was really, really smart to do, and it's got some good misdirects in it because of course Harley and Captain Boomerang and Rick are on that team, so it really doesn't seem like, well, they can't all die right now, right? And they don't, but it does kind of, I think, deliver the stakes of the Suicide Squad as a really solid introduction. And so the movie kind of had me after that. I was just kind of there for it. Then we get like flashbacks and we introduce the actual team we'll be following, yada yada. And that worked a lot better for me because of it. And so, you know, I watched this on HBO Max, and I asked Haley before we decided how we're going to watch it, if we wanted to go to theater or if we wanted to watch it on Max, and she was like, the last one was so bad, I don't really want to go waste the money to go see another one in the theaters if it turns out to be bad too. And so that opening scene really sold me on it, and I mean, I guess, like you said, Matt, if James Gunn's humor doesn't work for you, that it's probably not going to work for you. But like that opening scene sold me, and by the time I got to the end of the movie, I was really with it and just kind of there for the whole ride. And I honestly felt bad that I didn't get the chance to see this in theaters. I would have liked to see, you know, Starro on the big screen and stuff. I kind of was kicking myself that I didn't go to see this one in the theaters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Opening scene, just to pick on that real quick, I love that we open just entirely from Savant's perspective, and you see him kill the bird, and you're kind of with him as he's getting the Suicide Squad introduction lesson. And all of the banter he gets, or the other characters get while he's just kind of silently chilling there, is a lot of fun. And I think all of the actors, especially some of the stunt casting they do, like with having Pete Davidson in the opening scene, makes that early reveal that they all just get murdered on the beach so much more entertaining. And there's just something ridiculously funny about seeing fucking what's his face, Savant, run into the water screaming, terrified, and he gets his head by Amanda Waller. Like, that dude looks so imposing from minute one, and he just dies. And it's legitimately funny to me. Nothing in the opening scene is as funny to me as did no one check if Weasel could swim, but still.
Weasel,
Yeah, I think
breakout character, man. Instant favorite.
Yeah, see, I mean, for me, his humor is hit and miss before it's anything else. I mean, like, there are some bits that I do think are legitimately funny. Like, I love, what's his face asking if Weasel is a dog, and Boomerang's like, oh, what fucking kind of dog do you think it is? Like, that bit's all great. But then you have other jokes that are just like using Calendar Man just to call someone a pussy, and I'm just like, that's so fucking, like, I don't care. That's not even kind of funny. I mean, I guess the joke is supposed to be that if Calendar Man's calling you a pussy, then you probably are one, but whatever. But like, Weasel's a good example of a character who just like, I fucking hate anytime he's on screen, and I was so happy. I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to spend an entire movie with this annoying thing.
No, please. I hope Suicide Squad 3 brings him back and he's in the whole film.
That's exactly the type of, like, James Gunn humor that I'm just not into. Like, Weasel's just... like, I just don't really care for the guy, and I'm glad he died.
No, he didn't die. You didn't stay for the after credits. He's alive.
No, I know he survived. I just don't want to see him again. I'm glad he died and was dead, in quotations, for the entire film.
Oh.
I'm glad I did not have to spend the movie with him.
Like, if anyone else, you could have taken Harley, you could have taken Rick Flag. If I had got Weasel for that whole movie, I'd have been so happy.
I think exactly what I think. Like, I don't know. I'd be very curious. Like, I don't want to review this movie, but I would be very curious as to like the disconnect between like Steve and Birds of Prey. Because for me, a lot of this is just stuff that I thought worked really, like the irreverent humor, the really kind of over the top. I guess it doesn't really necessarily have an over-the-top villain, but kind of a weird villain. Like, I just feel like there was nothing in here that I didn't enjoy, like, way more in something like Birds of Prey, which is a little bit slightly more restrained. Not quite as many fucking dicks in the movie. There was just nothing here that I mean, I even think Harley, like Margot Robbie's Harley, is one of the most consistently good things in the DCEU, and I still think she's at her best in Birds of Prey, followed probably by this. And I did think a lot of this. I thought the opening was fairly good. Like, the opening is probably where I'm with it the most, where we have the entire like A team that just gets fucking killed immediately. So the opening's definitely where I'm with it the most, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, like, I was just, like, so into it because, again, the thing, for all the fuck-ups that the DCEU has made, and there are numerous, like, the one thing that I've really, really loved about them is after Man of Steel, they kind of just say, yeah, now the whole universe, it's just there. Like, if we want to introduce a character, we will. But all these characters that we want to just exist. There's no origins, you know? And so just, like, the fact that you've just got, like, this easily assembled Suicide Squad that you can just make fodder is great. I want to know what the fuck, like, Mongal was doing on Earth in the fucking Bel Rev. Like, that's his fucking Mongol sister. Like, Mongols had such a fucking just shit show of a history wherein, like, writers keep keep wanting to just kill Mongol because of how useless he is, but then they want someone to use to just beat up to show how strong their character is, so they bring in a new Mongol. So that there's been Mongol Senior, Mongol Junior, and then Mongal. It's so funny to me that there's fucking, of all the people to pull in, fucking Mongal to just kill in a helicopter crash. Like, that's just, you know what you do? You know what you do with that? You fucking, like, you get your Green Lantern series, and you just have episode 1, just fucking Hal Jordan handing Mongal off to fucking Bell Rev would be the, like, that'd be fucking cherry on top moment right there for me. I'd love shit like that. So just seeing like all that pre-established and just makes the world feel bigger, shit, I adore it. So the opening scene, just like, that's kind of what I told a lot of people, because I was, you know, obviously the first film doesn't have a great reputation, so I was like, okay, it's a long introduction, but just watch until the title of the film comes up on screen. If it doesn't have you at that point, nothing else that is going to happen is going to get you to stick around. Like, I think that's fair. If the introduction of the film does not entertain you, you probably will not want to stick around for anything else in the film. Is that a fair, like, assessment of it?
Exactly right, Ian.
Yeah, I think so.
That was kind of the thing. So the intro just, again, like, if I kind of just, like, we could just talk about the intro of this film for this entire podcast to me, because it's almost like perfect filmmaking in my mind. It perfectly delivers the premise of the film, and kind of gets you just in the seat and sells you so well that I was just absolutely in love with that. And then the rest of the film, I think, is legitimately good after that. I like the way that the characters bounce off of each other and interact. I adore the characterization for, like, Ratcatcher 2 and King Shark and not Deadshot. Peacemaker, I think, is, like Steve said, John Cena is just absolutely hilarious to see as Peacemaker. And I think he works really well. You know, he's this, like, untrustworthy element on the team. It's funny because he's kind of set up really well in the film, because I'm thinking of the scene where they're camping out and King Shark almost eats Ratcatcher 2, and Peacemaker's the one that suggests that they kill King Shark because I'm trying to remember the exact line he uses, but it's like, well, we can't work if we've got to watch our backs for one of our own. And so that's really good writing, given that he is the most untrustworthy one by the end of it. And, like, you kind of know he's going to be, because he's the one that's, like, the most there for what they're doing. As much, like, shade as he throws at Bloodsport at the beginning of the film, it's like, at least I don't kill for money. You know, they're kind of at each other's throats and everything. You kind of know that he's not going to be trustworthy, but, you know, you've got this fact that they're all kind of bad people and have done terrible things in the back of your head, or semi-terrible things, broken laws at least, in the back of your head. So you kind of like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, he's a bad person, but so are the rest of them, but he's, like, bad in a completely different way, and that kind of comes to fruition. And I don't know, very impressive characterization and writing there. I quite liked that.
I think, for the most part, all of his jokes really land for me, and I think they work really well with just kind of setting up the way he sees the world. Because there is that great line where he's like, he doesn't care how many men, women, or children he has to murder in the name of peace. And there's a very simple narrative here about, like, he's just patriotic to the most ridiculous, murderous fault. And John Cena plays the comedy of that really, really well, but James Gunn has an ability to make every scene with him in context feel like it has good stakes. It feels like it has some kind of thing going for it outside of just him being the butt of the joke. which I think is a really easy thing to do in the situation where you just like you have him in the tidy whities and you have him with the toilet seat on his head that he calls the beacon of freedom, and like you can make him just like the fall guy for everything happening in this movie, but he always feels like an equal presence. He never feels like he's not a threat. He never feels like he's not someone you have to watch out for. And I think that works really well, especially when you have a cast that, for the most part, got a very different array of skill sets. And so it feels like everyone is vital and necessary, but there's always just something a little bit off about Peacemaker. I really like the joke early on where Amanda Waller tells Idris Elba that everyone's chosen on this team because of their unique set of skills, and then introduces Peacemaker with the exact same sets of skills as a blood sport. But I like how that plays off by the end, because Peacemaker and Idris Elba's Bloodsport do end up kind of being two reflections of the same thing there. And I think even my disdain for certain parts of it aside, I even think they do a good job of having a middle spot with Rick Flag. I like that there is that moment at the end where the team kind of comes under conflict between Bloodsport, Rick Flag, and Peacemaker over what to do about the Starro thing, with Idris Elba just kind of using it to get them to get their freedom, Peacemaker wanting to save the U.S.'s face, and Rick Flag being like, no, this is not okay. I think it comes off in some ways as being oversimplistic, but I think that's just a consequence of this is a very economic and very efficient movie. And so all of the emotions and stakes you need for that are established very quickly and very well. And so the scene, when it gets there, it can just get rolling. You don't have to stop and have a deeper talk about it at any point, because you understand sort of the shallow ends of it just enough to make the payoffs work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought so too. Like, I thought Rick Flag gets enough development, and I like the way that he interacts with the rebel movement and the thing, because he's got like that, he literally wears a fucking cowboy hat in the movie, right? Like, he's got that type of white savior, American hero, Captain Kirk, John Wayne, like, dynamic to him. And I think it's interesting to pair that up with the more like traditional military, always follow orders, do or die kind of thing, and have them bounce off of each other, and in the end kill both of those characters in order to have the one that is the most selfish of those dynamics win out and not necessarily do the right thing for the wrong reasons. I thought was interesting. Like, he can't help but let he'll do the right thing, he'll save the city from Starro, but he's not gonna do like the morally high horse thing, because that would cost him too much. I thought that was all really, really well done. And I thought that dynamic was handled really well.
Yeah, so did I. I agree. I think the dynamic was handled really well.
Okay. Alfie, why don't you talk about your boy in this movie, because I know you're kind of disappointed by him.
Well, after he ruined Doctor Who, there was really no way he was going to get any more work. So I'm just glad he wasn't on screen for that long, so I didn't have to think of that honestly, They should have brought Matt Smith in as one of the bigger roles, honestly. I think he would have carried the film.
You can talk your honest opinions, Alfie. It's okay. I won't hold it against you.
No, Ian, you're my friend, and you've been feeling bad, so I'm gonna make sure you're okay.
But I want to know, like, legitimately, I'm curious what you thought of Capaldi in this.
Well, I mean, he's got a fucking killer speech, right? Like that fucking, and he's the man at those. Whenever you turn that, he can just do a monologue like no one else. He just gives it so much pathos and shit. So like that whole thing he has about Starro, and just how fucking diabolical the Thinker is in this, and what he does to Starro, and everything about it. They take it literally as far as, like, I can't think of anything else he could have done. But they touch every single box, and I think that's a really good move, because you really get a kind of
there's this very kind of I wasn't a fan of the line of like there's a freaking kaiju and it's like I don't like it when things get that winky to the camera with that extent, but there's definitely a lot of understanding of like American foreign policy as Godzilla, you know, like that, and what that and the nuke as the kaiju and everything with Starro, and Starro was nothing. It was completely peaceful, no hostile intentions whatsoever. Not unlike the comics, where like the comic Starro is a conqueror. That is a name this one was given. It was fully peaceful, staring at the stars, and then the Americans took it, experimented on it, and poked it, and just riled it up for decades until it became something that even then still didn't want to take control of the world. It just wanted a bit of peace for itself, and that's very. I mean, you just have to look up the news to see how that's always going to sadly be relevant in one of those things. So I think that was probably everything tied into that was the meat of the film. I just wish, and I understand that the Suicide Squad just inherently isn't something that has a rogues gallery or has like a major villain and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like you could have gotten a little bit in the same way that Steve, you were saying how like the main villain is too powerful for the Suicide Squad to be dealing with. I think if you had the Tinker be around a little bit more as that third act kind of foe, you might have got a little bit more of that street level thing with like the Starro stuff kind of happening in the background rather than the Starro being the only focus. You could have had a mix there of like, here's this grounded level foe, and then here's this. But then again, Peacemaker kind of fills that as well. So I don't know. I just wish he was in it more, and I'm sad that he's only in this so much, and now they can't recast him in another DC thing because
I mean, they
I just
could.
want to give you a Guardian.
They could put him in other stuff. There's nothing stopping them. I mean, if he grew his hair out and like got a beard or something, he could probably convincingly play another character.
Maybe, who knows? But again, that's always like the first time is always normally where they drop it, and so on and stuff. And it's not getting any younger either. So the action movies, I think, are limited for him, kind of thing, sadly. But you know, I enjoyed what he was in here for. I just think they didn't make as much use of the asset as they could have.
I think that's fair. I'd be curious when this gets like released and stuff if there are deleted scenes with him, because he is this. I think one criticism I will throw at the movie, even though I've been the staunch defender, I do think that like it does feel very scattered. It does feel like a lot's going on, and that some things like almost need to get literally put in the back seat, like they have to do with the Thinker for the Harley stuff. But at the same time, Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn is like a big selling point for the film, which is something that I'm sure drives Steve a little bit crazy. But
it absolutely does, because she's my least favorite part of the movie.
Oh no. But like it is so it's necessary to get her like back with the gang and involved in the story from just like a marketing and standpoint and everything. But it is kind of funny that like they go through all this to get the Thinker, and then they literally have to just like have him sit in the car for like a good 15 to 20 minutes of the film right after he's been introduced. It does feel like it has to pause to get Harley back and sorted and everything.
The whole Harley thing is just weird in and of itself, because I mean it's literally just, I mean at the end of the day it has almost nothing to do with what the Suicide Squad is doing. It's just this weird sort of, we need something for Harley to do and explain how she gets back with the rest of the group at the end of it. It's just very odd, and I feel like I don't know what that whole Harley subplot contributes other than a pretty cool action sequence.
I mean, I think you get like the twist of like the rotating hat of villain kind of thing. I liked that. It pays off something that's set up in the beginning, because otherwise she's just on the regular team, in which, like, from the Waller point of view, like Waller should have had in the first film, she contributes nothing to that team like as far as an asset. But it does make sense that like Waller would want her to be on the kill off distraction team, right? And
yeah, I mean, if you're gonna put Harley on the Suicide Squad at all, that's probably where Waller would put her for sure.
Yeah, and so like it sets her up to die, and then she's the one that gets to survive and everything. And I don't know, I like her moment reuniting with Rick. I thought that was pretty sweet. And then she's kind of just, you know, there and she's part of it, and she's got the javelin, so that's set up throughout the entire film, so that helps things. The whole subplot thing is just, I don't know, like it doesn't necessarily add to the overall plot of the film, but like it keeps things moving, it keeps things guessing, and it gives you things to cut to, wherein the rest of the team is like just traveling. So it gives you like, it helps you pass time without feeling like you're just watching like, you know, traveling or antics or stuff, because otherwise you wouldn't get necessarily action scenes or anything. You'd just get more banter scenes, which could also be welcome. But I don't know, this just feels like a fresher way to do things. I'm trying to think of other like action or ensemble or spy movie kind of things that do stuff like this, where we separate the characters out in that way.
Well, I mean, Star Wars, I think, is a really good example of this. And I think that's part of why I don't mind her plot being kind of its own cul-de-sac. Because there's definitely a sort of trend where a lot of media criticism focuses very, very heavily on plot stuff, on how airtight the plot is, how consistent the plot is, how callable everything is, how streamlined everything is. And there's certainly, you know, a degree of truth in being able to try and make sure everything streamlines itself as much as possible, especially when you're juggling a lot of balls. But there is kind of that old blockbuster movie tradition. James Bond movies do this too, where you kind of every now and then just need a little plot cul-de-sac to get more set pieces and to get something a little different going in the pace of the movie. This is a 2-hour movie, and by superhero movie standards, it's not particularly long, but I still submit, for just general movie length standards, 2 hours is a really long fucking time, and we've made it a very normal runtime, in part because I think we pad a lot of movies out to have things they don't need. But for this, because there isn't a very complicated plot happening, I have no problem with spending like 20 minutes on a Harley plot that just helps break up the pacing, gives us a different character to focus on, have different scenery, have cooler action sequences that you wouldn't see elsewhere, and let it build to a gag later. The economic thing here to do would have just been to have her and Rick Flag hang out the whole time until the squad reunited, and that would have made a movie that's probably about a half an hour shorter. But I think it probably would have made something that felt less fast-paced compared to this, because it helps that you have the Waller stuff, the A team, the B team, the Harley stuff, the Thinker stuff. It works, I think, as being able to cut back and forth between a lot of disparate elements, because every element is visually distinct and serves at least a different entertainment purpose. Not all of it's a plot purpose, but again, and this goes back to my general point earlier, which is this is just a fun movie. And to have a fun movie, sometimes you just need to like throw in an action scene that looks cool, is there for the time that's worth watching it, doesn't overstay its welcome, and then you cut back to the plot stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think for that style of filmmaking, which again Star Wars does a lot of, Last Jedi does this too with the Finn Poe stuff, or with the Poe Rose, or I keep messing up the characters, with the Finn Rose stuff. And I think that's fine and good, and I think it works for a blockbuster movie, especially one that isn't trying to take itself too seriously.
Yeah. I will say one criticism I have about the film is it wouldn't bother me, but it is kind of like action movie conceit, and the fact that it happens like at least twice, if not 3 times, does kind of start to get like, okay, now you're just going a little too hard on the convenience, is the number of times that someone is like killing a bunch of people in ways that would clearly be very loud and like alerting, and then like going into another room and no one is the wiser about what has just happened in the other room. Like, because Harley has like her whole scene of escaping where she just, which is funny to pair that with Birds of Prey, because apparently Harley Quinn's superpower is just being able to walk through heavily armored buildings and murder everybody. But like, she has her whole scene of escaping, and she keeps walking into a room and no one notices her, and she's just able to kill the next person, kill the next person, kill the next person. And it's funny to pair that against the scene with the Suicide Squad entering the Rebel base and killing all the people. And it's like, they keep surprising people, and people keep not knowing they're there, even though they've like literally blown stuff up. And like, that's the whole gag once they get to the end is they like crashed a whole guard tower, and they blew that guy up with the exploding bullet, and just all these things happen that seem really loud, and like people are like literally running and screaming at them as some of the quick kills happen, and yet people keep not noticing. And it's like, it's fun in a way for like that surprise action hit kind of thing, but it is like, it did start to get a little overbearing, I noticed.
I just think Harley in general is overbearing, and so I don't like her, and I will complain about everything with her. So I am with you in principle, even if I am not with you there in spirit.
You don't think that they kind of played that hand too many times?
No, I agree with you, but I agree with you not because of the reasons you listed out, but just because I am more susceptible to notice those things because it's Harley.
Okay, fair enough. It's funny because I clearly noticed it in the Harley scene, but I also noticed it in the squad infiltration scene too. So I noticed it there first. So I don't know, whatever.
I guess that one works a little better for me because they're literally walking through the whole area, murdering anyone that could have heard until you get to the very, very end when it's just a girl. So that one's not as bad for me, but the Harley one does stand out more. One, again, for me because it's Harley, and two, just because she should not be able to do these things, and I don't understand them.
If Batman did it, you wouldn't bat an eye. It's just because you hate women.
Exactly.
I don't know, like, I think it's actually more glaring in the Rebel base thing, because they're literally on guard duty and should be on high alert, and people are literally screaming. Meanwhile, some guy's just like, opening his blinds, drinking his coffee, when literally like 2 seconds earlier someone screamed and exploded. He should have heard that. But whatever, I guess it's fine.
I mean, it opens with King Shark eating a screaming dude
I know,
alive.
right? Like, someone should notice something. If this were Metal Gear Solid, those fucking exclamation points would be going off like crazy. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. But like, again, it's one of those things. It's just conceit of action movies. I get it, but I did think they were starting to play that hand a little too hard.
Matt brought up another thing we're talking about, which is King Shark fucking rules, and I love him.
Mm-hmm.
CGI for him is really, really good. Sylvester Stallone's voice acting for him is cool. Apparently the Harley Quinn show and the production on this were happening around the same time, so it was just pure dumb luck that both of them have a very similar aesthetic for King Shark compared to the comics. That's still pretty funny to me. I like him better in the Harley Quinn TV show because he's actually got dialogue and then a progressive character arc. But that's sort of just the benefit of him being on a weekly animated TV show versus a 2-hour movie. What he does in this, in general, I think works really well. The scene with the fucking jellyfish where he's dancing around and is really cute and wholesome for a minute. Then he's like, new dumb friends, and they start eating him. That's funny to me.
Mm-hmm. I like his relationship with Ratcatcher is really cute. I like the way that develops a lot. Yeah, he's great. And they even have a fucking that bit at the end, which almost reminds me of like a pastiche of like a Hulk scene where he's like, oh, that thing, nom nom, and he's like, yep. Like it just reminds me of the fucking Avengers with Hulk. But yeah, I really like King Shark in this a lot. He's adorable. He's probably one of my favorite. Like anytime he's on screen, I'm having a good time.
So you like King Shark, but you didn't like Weasel.
Because Weasel's fucking hideous and gross, and I hate looking at his stupid face.
That's the best part.
But like, that's one of those things where I'm like, I get the joke, but you've gone so far with it that I just can't even stand looking at him.
When
like,
he coughs and his eyes pop out of his head.
Yeah, I just viscerally, I'm like, I don't want to be looking at this with my eyes.
I hope Weasel.
My thing.
I hope Weasel is the hot Halloween costume of 2021.
Oh God, I hope not. Yeah, King Shark is great. I will say, I think Polka Dot Man is also pretty humorous. I don't know much about Polka Dot Man from the comics because I don't think anyone knows much about Polka Dot Man from the comics. I like that actor a lot. And his bit at the end where he's like, I'm a fucking super, and then he gets killed. Like, that was one of the ones I was like, oh no. So he was one of the ones that managed to get me a little bit. So I mean, I don't want to come across like I totally don't like the movie or anything like that, because I'm not trying to. For me, it didn't hit as strongly, and I think a lot of that is just because I find James Gunn's style to be very overpowering, and I just it just doesn't click for me like I'd like it to. But I mean, I agree with a lot of the points you guys have made. I mean, it's certainly an improvement over the original for sure, and there's certainly proper setup and payoff. There's good character moments. You've got that scene in the club, which almost seems to be like a direct response to the like bar scene in the first movie, which is almost just there is like, all right, now we have to put in the scene where the Suicide Squad is at a low point and gets to know each other. All right, check, move on. Whereas in this movie, where they're in the like club and they're waiting for
it feels more natural in this movie too.
Yeah, it feels natural. Like, it feels like this is a group of people who is actually like getting to know each other and like kind of enjoying their time together. So like, I think this accomplishes a lot of what the original film did and just feels more natural doing it. It's just the overall package doesn't fully work for me, and a lot of it is just stuff that's hard to articulate because it comes down, because with James Gunn stuff, it's going to come down to like, does his writing style and sense of humor click for you? If yes, then you're probably going to enjoy this movie a lot more.
I mean, sure.
One other behind-the-scenes thing, I think, maybe just to build off your point there, Matt, which is James Gunn, when he got moved over to DC, was apparently offered anything he wanted to do, and that included a Man of Steel sequel. And I feel like of all the DC properties, this is probably the one he fits the most for. So I see what you mean about like James Gunn's style not necessarily fitting with you, because he definitely doesn't work for me most of the time. Like, I don't like the Guardians movies as much as most people. I don't like that, what's that movie called, Super? Like, I don't in general like his stuff. I do think, though, given the direction they went with David Ayer's Suicide Squad, I am much happier he did this over anything else at DC.
Which is funny because, like, you hear... I remember hearing the news that James Gunn was going to DC after the whole Twitter situation, and Disney dropped him to save face. And it's like, okay, what's he going to do over at DC? Suicide Squad. Okay, so Guardians at DC. And it is 100%. You could tell me that this was in the same universe as the Guardians films, and I would 100% believe you. You could do a crossover with those characters, with those versions of those characters and these characters. It would 100% work. So it is so funny to me to find out that it was not mandated that he do the Suicide Squad, you know? To find out that he chose it instead is just hysterical to me, because I guess that guy knows his brand, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, apparently he had like complete creative control over this. He could kill anyone he could want. He could add anyone he wanted. And they didn't really demand anything. The only thing that DC really did is that they chose the name The Suicide Squad. James Gunn thought it was a terrible name, and he said it as a joke. But then DC liked it, so it just became The Suicide Squad. But apparently he could do whatever the hell he wanted, and the only things that changed were just like scheduling conflicts and stuff like that. Like, apparently he did write Deadshot into this movie, and Idris Elba was supposed to be Deadshot, but they decided that they wanted Will Smith to eventually come back, so they just made him Bloodsport. And then there's a few things here and there about, like, he wanted to cast one person here, but they weren't available, so they cast someone else. Like, Dave Bautista was supposed to be in this, but he was busy filming something else, so they couldn't. But aside from just, like, things he could not control, literally, he could do whatever he wanted with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's...
I'll be legitimately surprised if Will Smith as Deadshot does ever actually come back into this franchise.
Honestly, it's really upsetting to me that we could have had Idris Elba as Deadshot. Because, like, Will Smith's fine and everything, but come the fuck on. Idris Elba as Deadshot, we need that.
Well, I mean, it's weird that they even, like, I don't know much about Bloodsport, but I mean, they even give him the whole thing with the daughter, and I mean, it does, in a lot of ways, feel like it is supposed to be, like, because in Suicide Squad, Deadshot's daughter is younger, and so, like, if you think, okay, this takes place a few years later, that's about the age that, like, Deadshot's daughter would be, so this very easily reads as, like, it could have been a continuation of that story to a degree, so it is kind of odd that they just basically gave him a similar situation to what Deadshot had, and then just kind of changed the name of the character.
Yeah, it's another strange thing for me. Again, just from like an adaptation perspective, where it just sort of feels like there are no staple characters in the Suicide Squad because they all change out because of prison sentences and deaths and whatnot, and the only constants are Amanda Waller and Deadshot. So just in principle, to have a Suicide Squad movie that Deadshot's not in is very bizarre.
Yeah.
What I find funny about it is despite like he got offered Man of Steel 2, and he didn't turn down to do this, but he still somehow managed to introduce more Superman villains than any DC movie had previously done between Bloodsport and Mongal. So like, good for him.
That's really funny. I didn't think of that. Yeah, and then now you got an off-screen Superman adventure. They'll probably do like a comic tie-in or something like that, Alfie. There you go.
I'd have watched Idris Elba versus Henry Cavill. Like, fuck it, that'd be hype.
That's always what's funny about this movie, the way that they're like, oh yeah, he's in jail because he shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet. I'm like, fucking when? When did that happen? Like, I'm so
all the good Superman things happened off screen.
Yeah, I know. Like this movie's kind of funny to me because I appreciate that it doesn't give a fuck. And they're just like, oh yeah, Savant's in here because probably Black Canary put him away, and like all these other characters are just here and they just exist, and like yeah, Calendar Man exists and like Mongal exists.
Well, I mean,
fucking
just like Batman in Justice League or maybe it's BVS literally says it worked in Gotham for 20 years. So you've got like 20 years of Bat villain history at least.
That one doesn't bother me so much. It's more the Superman ones where it's just like you can use whatever characters you want, introduce them however you want. And I just think that this is the weirdest universe to do that in, because this universe feels like it's in a constant state of just getting itself going. But yeah, I mean, I think that was probably ultimately for the best, and I certainly don't begrudge James Gunn for getting to make the movie that he got to make. So I mean that he wanted to make. So I mean, good on him.
Yeah, I mean, and it'd be nice if in like a successful DCEU thing we had it'd be cool if we had a scene of like a Superman movie, like somewhere in it he gets shot with a kryptonite bullet, and it's like maybe the introduction or maybe like it happens at the end as like a big like oh shit moment, and it's just to set up this. That'd have been pretty cool, but I'll take this instead.
My favorite thing about the Bloodsport kryptonite bullet thing is when I made my Batman vs Superman video all those years ago, the number one comment I got repeatedly was I made the suggestion that Lex Luthor's planet doesn't make any sense. Why doesn't he just shoot Superman with a kryptonite bullet? And every fucking comment was like, well, in this universe you can't make bullets out of kryptonite. And I don't know what they were sourcing to say that, but everyone and their mother was like, you can't make bullets out of kryptonite in this universe. And then Deadpool shows up and shoots Superman with the kryptonite bullet off screen. And so 4 years later, I am vindicated.
I would bet money that's one of those things where it's like someone in a video, like in a YouTube video that went semi-viral, and like Snyder fan circles made some sort of argument for that, and everyone just recycled it. Like, I would bet money that's what happened.
Man, Steve, you should go back to the comments on that video, and you should like you should upload the scene from Suicide Squad where they say shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet, and just link that in replies to every single comment.
I really, it's fucking ridiculous, and I love it so much. Also, I love just offhanded as a gag that some dude could just shoot Superman with a kryptonite bullet and we hand wave that away.
Mm-hmm. It's a good moment. It's a good moment.
Yeah, Idris Elba, man, he will say no to nothing, and every time he's on screen, I just fucking love him.
He's a good actor. He fucking sells it. Again, I'm more curious to see what the hell. It's funny because obviously Will Smith didn't want to come back for this because the first movie was such a shit show. And then like this one's getting like, you know, critical praise, and like the fans seemed to really like it. Like, you know, there's people really well receiving this film. You gotta think Will Smith's kind of like looking like, God fucking damn it, I could have been in a good movie.
When is the last time Will Smith's been in a good movie?
I don't know. What's Will Smith been in recently?
That movie with his son, that was terrible. That movie where he played his own clone.
Wait, what?
What was that movie called? Gemini Man? Where like
Yeah.
an agent and then someone cloned him to be in his prime, so it was young him versus old him. It was very, very strange. He was
in the animated movie with Tom Holland, Spies in Disguise, where he played a pigeon, or a spy that got turned into a pigeon.
Yeah, Will Smith could have been back for Deadshot or something, but nope, did not happen.
I mean, if they characterized him the same way as Bloodsport got to be here, like if the script, I mean, it does show 100%. It shows that it is just Deadshot was written in this, and then we changed it to Bloodsport at the last minute. So if this was just the characterization they gave him, it'd make the ending of the first movie a little weird. It's like, I'm gonna be better. He was not better. He shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet.
Yeah, it would have been interesting too, because Deadshot's another character that, if you wanted to build off the theme of this movie and have everyone bond over their own parental trauma, you could have given some more of that comic book stuff of Deadshot onto him. But as it stands, they give it to Bloodsport, and it still works really, really well for me. The key word that you mentioned earlier was just that it felt really natural, and all of them getting their moments to kind of share works really well in that it doesn't feel like they're just kind of obligatory giving you introductions. It feels like this is all coming from very natural dialogue and slow bonding. So it would have been nice if I got a Deadshot proper in a movie where he could have just kind of slowly bonded with the squad. But I'm not mad about it. Not like I am about Rick Flag.
So will you just watch this in headcanon that it is Deadshot, or are you going to continue to think it's Bloodsport the whole time?
No, I'll let it be Bloodsport. I will save my Deadshot agenda for when we get a good Deadshot movie, which will probably be never, but still.
Okay.
I was gonna say, no, you mean if.
Damn.
When we get a good Deadshot movie.
Yeah, and I'll be over here when we get a Midnight or an Apollo movie.
That's probably more likely, to be completely honest.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. You're absolutely right.
That's 100 times more likely.
Oh, man. Matt's just over here with the gay agenda.
I need gay. That's where I live.
I want a Grayson movie where Apollo's or a Midnighter's the bad guy, and he has the line from the comic where he's like, "I know that ass anywhere."
Yeah, I need it.
Oh, man. I don't know. Alfie, you've been uncharacteristically quiet. Give us the last thing we'll talk about before we go on to final thoughts and stuff. Give us something else about this movie that was a stick in your craw.
And what I didn't like about this has to do with King Shark. Because I loved everything else about King Shark in this. I just think it's kind of
for as much of an R rating this movie has and as gory as they get with it sometimes, I think they're kind of pussies. The King Shark is, in my opinion, if you have a giant shark character and you then don't have a feeding frenzy scene, then you fail. Like, they set up, right? They set up the whole thing where, like, he eats one person, he rips one person up, and there's, like, a gang of people in front of him, but it's just one person at a time. And, like, yeah, it's cool, but, like, fucking just go wild. Like, just fucking tear into the whole group. That was disappointment to me. I'm feeding frenzy or bust, in my opinion, if you're gonna have a shark character in your thing.
Fair.
Why not?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Type.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I liked it. So Alfie, I'm gonna question you again though, because I was hoping for something different. When I saw your first thoughts on this movie, and I was like, oh no, he hates it too. You said, if I remember correctly, via tweet, I have the receipts. You said, I don't care, or it doesn't seem to matter how well done a Suicide Squad movie is. I just don't like the premise.
Yeah. Okay. So. Because again, when I said, like, I agreed with Matt, he eloquently put it, and the thing is, I don't think this is just something where it's just not for me kind of thing, where I was just like, yeah, I agree with said Ian, I do think the, like, jokes aside, I do think the craft is here, I do think this is well directed, I think it's well acted, I think there's good moments and stuff. It's just, no matter how much, and even outside of the humor, I think there's enough drama here where I theoretically could be invested. I don't think this is badly written or anything, outside of just some of the jokes that doesn't land for me. But I think that's more a taste thing. I think it's just, I could not give less of a shit about military operations going in. Like, when Steve said, like, this is the perfect premise for a Suicide Squad movie, kind of immediately, like, solidified for me. Like, I'm just never going to care about these characters no matter what. It's just, on a conceptual level, I just do not give a fuck about the C-tier villains going out for a military job to do, like, off the books, like I just don't. Nothing about the concept intrigues me or appeals to me. Like, and it's a shame because individually, I like Amanda Waller a lot as a character. I like characters like Deadshot or Harley or, like, the individual stuff in here. I think it's just putting those characters on a mission for a government kind of Black Ops action movie setup is just, my brain just doesn't turn up. It's just nothing about it is interesting to me. So that's what I meant by that tweet. It was just like, because the first movie is just awful, like, on every conceptual level. It's just bad, and that's not fair to the Suicide Squad premise. Like, it was just a badly executed thing, right? This, I think, was well executed, but it still couldn't make me care. So I think it is just, for me, the Suicide Squad just doesn't appeal.
Okay, all right, fair enough. You know, it occurs to me we did the whole thing and we really did not talk about, I guess, the main attraction in much depth. What did people think of Starro?
He's the best thing in the movie.
I know nothing about Starro, but he was...
It's a big monster that fucking mind controls people. Like, Matt, you're always so... You're so fucking like, I don't know about this, so I probably shouldn't talk about it. What fucking internet YouTuber opinion person are you? You think you have to have expertise on stuff to talk about it? You fool?
Yes, actually. I don't know. I hate that thing where I'm just like... I hate being that person who I'm just like, oh, no, man, I really didn't like this character. I thought he was, or something like that. Or even the opposite, like, man, I really liked this character. And then someone being like, yeah, well, that's not at all what they're like in the comics. I'm just like, fucking, of course they are. Okay. But, like, yeah, I liked Starro. He was fine. He served his purpose as a big monster guy. Although when Harley stabbed him in the eye and all the rats went inside him to eat out the inside of his eyes, I was just like, I'm gonna be sick. But yeah, he was. I was saddened by the. I was surprised and pleased by how far they went with the whole, like, human experimentation in the labs. Like, it was the level of fucked up that I was just like, okay, now I see. I'm here for this. And the whole, you know, him being happy looking at the stars thing. You know, I thought it was fine. I still think it's a weird choice for the Suicide Squad, because I'm kind of with Steve on this one in that I haven't read a lot of Suicide Squad, but when I think Suicide Squad, I think let's go into a country and depose a leader that is inconvenient for the United States. And I'm like, I would have preferred to see that. I would have preferred to see a more small-scale Suicide Squad movie that's focused on, like, an assassination or something like that. So I still think it has that same problem of the first Suicide Squad movie of just, like, a team of people who have really no business fighting this giant, potentially, like, country or planet level threat. But
I mean, I think it works in that, like, it's not unexpected. They put it in the trailers and everything, right? It's not their mission to fight Starro. They're actively told, don't fight Starro. You're not good enough to fight Starro. We don't care about Starro. Like that. I think that it helps is the Suicide Squad, as far as in story, is not being put up against Starro. Like as far as the characters are concerned, the audience is putting the Suicide Squad up against Starro. I mean,
that's fair. I mean,
journey
it's not the
takes
same
them
as,
there.
It's not the same as Suicide Squad 1, where Waller's pitching this as, like, we need a team to kill the next evil. Like, if Superman goes evil, we need a team to handle that. So here's a dude with boomerangs. Like, it's not that levels of, like, stupid, for sure. And I do like that it's ultimately their decision to go up against it. So, I mean, it does work better, for sure. And I think Starro is fine. I just have no real attachment to Starro other than just like, hey, he's
No
a
one
big,
has
giant
attachment to
purple
Starro.
alien.
There's not a single, like...
attachment to Starro.
No, a lot of people have it. Dude,
No one
fucking,
gives a
like,
fuck about
when this
Starro.
was announced, I saw nothing but, like, people on Twitter and, like, being hype about, like, oh man, I love Starro, but they could have just been bullshitting. I don't know.
They're just
my
chasing the clout. You know it.
The Starro clout.
Yeah.
I'm here for Starro. I love the DC weird space monsters. They're awesome and great, and that's what I love about the fact that this was in it, and like, because fuck it, I'd never expect we're gonna get Starro in live action, looking exactly like just like straight, and it's like there's no compromises. It's 1-to-1. It's the same design.
It's not a
the same
cloud.
outfit. Exactly, right? Like it's everything you'd want from it, exactly as it is, and they keep it just as silly as Starro is, but they do that great thing where it's goofy, but at the same time horrifying, because they really show, like, if this skin gets on you, you are fucking dead. Like, there's no, oh, we got the Starros off them, everyone's fine. I was like, no, this gets on you, you're just gone. You're dead. It rips open your face, and alien, like, chestbuster style kind of face hugger. Like, I think that's a really, really cool idea for Starro. I think it was done perfectly. Had no complaints about it whatsoever. I think Starro is without a doubt the best part of this movie. I loved it, and I respect James Gunn for that, because I think he's the only one who had the clout and the silliness to actually do it. I don't think anyone else would have ever done this.
Yeah, no, I thought
Totally working.
I thought it was a really cool choice to put Starro in the film. Again, like Alfie said, I think it's great to finally see one of those big, goofy comic book villains show up and just be presented 1-to-1. I think that's fantastic. I was surprised that we got sympathetic Starro. That was a really interesting choice, and I think it works pretty well, and pays off, as well as it could. I do like the way that they take Starro down. It's like, it's a big fucking eye, you just get something in there, and it's smart because they show, like, it's not just anything can penetrate it, because you got the bullets bounce off the eye and everything. So they show that it's, like, hard, but then you've got, like, the javelin. It's like this, really ultra sharp. It's set up the whole movie to be like this important cosmic grail kind of weapon. And then it works, and it gets her through, and it's not like just getting in there kills him. Then you get the rats. I really did like the final scene with Ratcatcher and Bloodsport, and, like, Ratcatcher bringing all the rats out of the city. Apparently this was something that was added after the fact, and I just gotta say thank God, because it does kind of make, like, it states the point of the movie, but I did think it did it well. The Dika Waititi scene with talking about, well, if rats have a purpose, then we all do. I thought that was like a really good way to, show the like even bad people can do a good thing kind of premise of the film. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know. I quite liked a lot going on in this movie, and I liked Starro in it. I thought it was really cool and really fun to see Starro. It was great. I like how Starro moved too, because he had to like just kind of flop around, which was kind of cool.
You could tell it was something that was born in anti-gravity that wasn't used to being on. Like, it's not designed to walk, but it has to find a way to do it.
Steve, what do you think of Starro?
Starro's fine. I mean, I like that he's a one-to-one comic. I still don't like that he was the big bad of a Suicide Squad movie. It really should have just been the squad finds the Thinker, and it's a big political conspiracy thing. I didn't need giant sci-fi destroy the city battle at the end for this kind of movie. It was interesting to make him sympathetic, and I thought he was really cute, and I'm surprised that DC has not released millions and millions of Starro plushie toys, because that would sell as fast as Baby Yoda, if not faster. So Starro's fine. I have no strong feelings about Starro, because it's just another thing that goes in my adaptation brain bucket of, well, if I was making a Suicide Squad movie, Starro would not be the bad guy. And I also just sort of think,
do it, you
the
coward.
political commentary sort of gets muddy and lost by the end there with Starro, so I don't love it, but I don't have a problem with it either.
Okay, all right, fair enough. All right, I guess that checks all the boxes I wanted to talk about. Did anyone have any final things they wanted to bring up before we go on to ratings?
All of the needle drops with the music in this, I think, were good, and were not over the top beating you in the head like the first movie.
Cool. I like the Harley one. That was a good transition to have her sing in the song and then play it when she's triumphant kind of thing. Thought that was cool. All right. Well, go ahead and go on to ratings. I'll go first. I'll give this movie 4 out of 5. Aaron, I know you've been listening the whole time. How about you leave a fucking YouTube comment and help out my analytics instead of just bitching at me on Twitter? Who's next?
I will give it 3 out of 5 disgusting hairball eye-popping weasel creatures.
Yay.
I'll give it 3 out of 5 smaller bullets. Because I did love the payoff of that.
I'll give it exactly the same as Ian. You should go listen back to this entire podcast and just, appreciate that we've got this wise man on the show and host for us every week, because, he doesn't get enough credit.
Thanks, Alfie. I appreciate you. This is why you're my favorite. You're a good boy, Alfie. You get a treat. Oh, all right. Whose turn is it next time? Is it mine? Is it yours? Whose is it?
No idea.
I think it would be me, or yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's Alfie. Yeah.
Okay. Alfie, we need a discussion topic for next week. What are we going to be discussing?
Okay, discussion topic for next week. You tell me again. I know you say every time, oh, don't care if it's a repeat, Alfie, but just.
I literally do not care.
Have we done anything on the importance of rose galleries?
I don't know. Sure, why not? Let's do it.
Okay, do that. Just villains in general, importance of does a good villain make a story? Do good villains seem necessary? I'll do characters with better villains get easy stuff, just etc. 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 Go into that.
Sure, works for me. All right, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the starfish erotica lover.
I am the champion of the oppressed.
And we are your geeky gentlemen.
And we will be discussing things like how you're not supposed to steal my outro, Steve.